Hi, this is Michael from Expanse VR, and this is the 5th episode in the beginner series for Shader Graph. In this episode, we are going to cover off the challenge that I gave for you in the last video, and then we're going to dive straight into actually starting to edit our graphs in script, and also adding a border to this health bar, status bar, to give it a little bit more visual presence. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and of course click that notification button down below to make sure you are notified whenever I post a new tutorial for you. So in the last episode, I gave you two challenges. One was to change the direction of the actual input. So at the moment, it's going in the left to right direction, and obviously we want to flip that around and have it going in the other direction. As you would see normally in a health bar or a status bar, it would normally go from right to left. The other one was at the moment we're using a value of 0 to 1. I personally believe it's better to have a value of 0 to 100, so you can use that as a percentage of any value coming in. Now, there's also one other thing you may have noticed, is that at 0 we got 100% of our bar, and at 1 we have nothing. And we also want to have that flipped around as well. That might have been something you might have picked up. So technically there's actually 3 challenges. So if you didn't pick up on that last one, that's okay. But we're going to go through all 3 of them. All very simple, all nodes that you've already got. It's just showing you how they actually function together. So the first one we can do is change this to flip around, because this isn't the way we want it. We want it to go from 1 being full, 0 being empty. First one we're going to use is a 1 minus, and if we just simply slip that in between our input to here, it's just going to flip those values around for us. And now 0 nothing, 1 full. Nice and simple. And if you haven't figured this out, again, this is what we're going to use, the same one, the 1 minus, to flip our direction as well. Same thing. 1 minus gets used a lot in shaders. So if we save that, 1, 0, and now we're going in the direction that we want to. Again, as you see, nothing complicated here. It's just understanding the maths of it all. And lastly is having a value of 1 to 100. So what we can do here is now 0 to 1, we're going to go 100. Create a division node. Now, actually, no, sorry. Before I use that, most people may have used a division node. Funnily enough, a multiply node is actually more performant than a division node, and it does the same thing. And all we have to do is go by 0.01. And save asset. So now we have 100 and we have 0. And that's pretty much our challenge for last week. So hopefully you got all that. If you didn't, don't worry. A lot of this is going to come to you as you use it more and more. So now diving into this week's content, the first thing we're going to do is actually do the coding side of things. So this is showing you how you can start manipulating the data that is coming into your shaders through scripts in C#. So what we're going to do down here in our script folder, right click, create C# script. We're just going to call this health bar. And then open up in Visual Studio. At the beginning of this series, I did mention that it's expected that if you're already getting your shaders, that you do have at least basic understanding of C#. But if there's anything that I get into in this that you don't understand, I would recommend going in and checking out some more stuff on C#. If you'd like me to do an introductory series into C# to cover these things, comment below and I will definitely look into doing that. So with this stuff, I am going to go through it a little bit fast, just for the sake of the fact that you should know pretty much all this if you're at this point anyway. This is more showing you how to use certain functions to actually start handling your shaders. So the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to need to access our shader. So I'm just going to use a serialized field. And we're going to do that by accessing our renderer. Sorry, my typing is abominable at the moment. And now that we got access to the renderer, what we're going to do is actually have a value that we can change, which for the moment will just be an integer, be current health. And what we're going to do to make this nice and easy is add a slider. So range, and just as we've got in our shader, 0 to 100, just to make this nice and easy. And what we'll do is each frame we'll actually check to see if there's any changes to this variable here, and then update our renderer. So we need to access the material in our renderer, and there we need to set, and as you can see there's three different options here: set float, set texture, or set color. And if we go back to our shader, you can see that we have a float value here. But if we wanted to change the color, this one is a color value. Pretty self-explanatory. So for this one, we're going to be setting float. So set float. Oh. So I'm just trying to get the help file there. And as you can see here, it is telling us that we need two things. We need a ID and we need a float. And in fact, here you can see that there's an you can do this by an integer or by a string, which is what we're going to use. And for this, we can go back to our shader, and we can see this is why we've set here the reference. Reference is the string that we'll be passing in, and it's very simple: copy and paste. And here we just put the current health. And it is as simple as that. Now, yes, there are more performant ways about doing this, and if you were doing it in a program, you can do it as a function, but for the moment this is going to show us how it works. And then all we need to do is grab this object here, add the script, and if we push play, oh, sorry, we need to actually add the renderer in. So if we drag that object itself, rename that to health bar so it's easy to see, drag it into itself as a reference. Okay, now, there we go. Our script is now changing it. And if we want this more as an example, what we can do is go back into our script. We will change this out to update health. We can go input if input dot get key down dot h for health. And what we'll do Actually, let's make just 10. We can then go current health minus equals health change, set health. So now if I push play, there we go, nice and easy. Now the second part of the challenge was adding a border to our bar, because as we decrease the health bar, you can see that it's a bit hard to see where it's supposed to be at. Like, is this halfway? Is this full way? We don't know until we actually see it moving. So it'd be good, nice to have a border so that we can get a little bit more of a reference to how much it actually is. Now there's several different ways that we can do that. We can do that with a texture, which we might look at later on. But for the moment, we're just gonna have a look at another node, which is the rectangle node. But simply put, the white area is going to be the square that it generates. And for instance, this would be, if we just adjust this to be more like what we would expect a border to be, maybe 0.9. Take this one, 0.9 as well. You will see that there's a little bit of an issue with this as we move along because of the shape of our bar, but we'll be able to adjust that ourselves anyway. Now, if we were to use this, obviously white is going to be the area that we use. And if we do a multiply, we create a color. And we change this to say a brown. Let's make our border brown. You can see that we've got it the wrong way around. And by now this should be pretty obvious how we're going to change this from the other examples. And if you want, you can pause this for a second and take a second to work out how you would change it. And coming back right now, we will add this in another 1 minus node to flip it around again. So again, you really sometimes don't need to know what, oh, sorry, not to that one. How the math works on some of the things, just knowing that whenever you need to flip around a black to white, just use the 1 minus node. So now there we go, we've got our border. And what we shall do with this as well is that we will change this into a property, just as we've done before. We'll call this border color. And as I said before, just as good practice, add in a better reference name than what we had before. And so work as we go. Now, one of the things that people always go on or always ask is, how do you go about figuring how to put a shader together? And putting a shader together is exactly the same as writing code. You break it down into small chunks and work on each one as you go. Sometimes those chunks can be a little bit more difficult. They might involve a bit more maths or a little bit more problem solving, but if you break them down into each one of the components, it's going to make it easier. So if we were to jump into C#, into Visual Studio. So if we were to jump into Visual Studio, and if we were to do this as a function, as private add border. And if we were to write this in pseudocode, you'll be wanting to do two main things here. First one is you're looking to add the border color to our health bar color. But we also have a second problem, that as we decrease the health, that we're decreasing the alpha. Or sorry, not decreasing, we are cutting off the alpha. And so the other thing we need to do is to modify the alpha channel. to maintain our border. So already we're looking at two different things here. And so if we look at the first one, let's add the color in. So we're actually going to, for the moment, get rid of our alpha channel. Let's just keep it a solid color to make things easier for ourselves. So if we simply were to just add our color, it kind of works, but it kind of doesn't, because if you can see, the color from our border is actually being changed now because we're actually adding those two values together. So we need to do a couple of things, and the easiest way to understand this is that we need to start using the alpha channel to change it. So if we go, and this will make more sense in just a second when I do this. So at the moment we've got a solid color coming from here. What we would like to do is have it the opposite of this. So if we pull this in from here, we're going to multiply. And yes, we're getting a bit spaghetti again, but we'll fix it up shortly. So if we bring this into here, that original rectangle, and multiply that by our color, all of a sudden we've got a black border. We'll get rid of the preview because we don't need that now. But with black outlining, so it's not actually adding any value to these points here. So now if we add this in together, there you go. We now actually have our proper brown and our red. So if we add this to the color and save it, we have it. There we go. But as you can see, because we have warped the shape of our actual quad here, this is not quite working properly. So all we need to do is we need to change this ever so slightly, probably something like 9.3, and maybe bring this down to 8.7. Let's see how that looks. Oh, no, actually, no, I need to do it the other way around. There we go. And maybe even a bit more. There we go. Good enough. Close enough. You can play around with that a bit more. And like I said, this is one of the issues that we're coming into with the way that we're doing it here. There are other ways that we can make this a lot cleaner, but this works for the moment. So there you go. We've got it working now. And if we were to bring this down, nothing's happening because we've not connected in our actual alpha, but we have covered the first part of our pseudocode. We have added the border color to our health bar color. And now if we just want to clean this up a little bit to make it a little bit more easy to work with. There we go. Now, the other part of this is organization, and I didn't mention this at the beginning, but we will add this in, is that we can actually group this up now. Go down to group selection, and sorry if I didn't show that. You left click and select all, right click and group selection, and we're going to call this the color. So we can now move this around nice and easily, knowing this is what it's doing. And if we were to plug this back in to our alpha channel and save, this is the other problem that we're having. So it's working in the fact that we've got our border, but it's now deleting everything, and that's not what we want to do. The only thing we want to do is delete our center color. And that I'm going to leave you for the challenge for this video. We'll cover it off in the beginning of the next video. And if you're worried, again, we've covered all the nodes necessary for this. So 2 challenges actually. 1, I want you to organize this into an alpha group. And 2, I want you to be looking to use the similar steps to what we've used here to only manipulate the alpha of our color, our health bar section, not the border. And we'll do that in the next episode. As well, in the next episode, we're going to start adding in some variation to our health bar in the way that it looks, and also adding some manipulation with the use of time to them. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and share to help grow our beautiful Unity community. And don't forget to hit that subscribe and notification button below to make sure you get to see our next video. See you shortly.